Welcome back to another fantastic episode of I'm Gonna Talk and You're Gonna Listen. This is going to be a little bit of a faster paced episode. It's almost 1 a.m., but I got a lot on my mind. First of all, Chance Paladin here. I'm gonna talk. You're gonna listen. Let's go. Yep, and Spooky the cat. So, first of all, it's April 1st, so don't believe anything online. For the next since about yesterday through till about tomorrow. I'm not going to waste anyone's time with that. I think it's fine if it's announced that it's an April Fool's joke, but now everyone trolls year round, and it's besides the couple usual places, it's completely lost. It's anyway. So next thing. So housekeeping, house cleaning. The book cover rebranding is almost done. We're like 95% done, which is insane. There's a couple of like alternate covers, alternate colors I still want to do. Alternate covers. So basically, for those of you that are uninitiated, if it had its own Kindle version, well, Amazon allows you to have different covers for Kindle print, paperback, and hardbound. So since there's so many cover ideas I wanted to do, they don't let you do alternative covers for the same print medium, which is dumb because you can have 15 colors of a t-shirt, but you can't have 15 different book covers. But you can have a different Kindle and paperback and hardbound. So that's what I've been doing. Hasn't been mandatory, but for the ones where I had clear standout 2 or sometimes even 3 or 4 versions of a cover, that's what we've been doing. Well, I don't know. I don't want to go into a big history of my book cover situation right now, but suffice it to say, there's going to be an art book coming sooner now, actually, rather than later. Thankfully, color prices have gone way down on Amazon. It won't be huge, but it'll be like 8.5 by 11. They'll be decent sized. It won't be tabletop, coffee table, but it'll be good enough. A Far Cry used to be like $40 for like 15-20 pages. It's anyway, blah blah blah. I'm wasting time. Not a lot of time. So, do I want to talk about? Okay, I've got a bunch of topics. I want to talk about area study, which is kind of a prepper thing, although you can use it when you're writing books too. There's also AI. Kind of want to talk about AI stuff more. I feel like there's something else. Oh well, I didn't have time to write notes. It all came in my head at the same time. So let's see. AI. There's still a lot of people complaining about AI. I am still very much in the line of AI can still very easily be theft. And early adopters pretending it wasn't is stupid. And I think I had and recorded and re-recorded this rant 2 or 3 times, and I had it written 2 or 3 times, and I can't remember how far along I got of which version exactly I posted, but there's a couple of different directions on this if you're on the fence about AI. First of all, if you just message me down in the comments, I can help you navigate the whole thing from a pragmatic point of view. Hardware-wise, the normal average computer user is getting further and further away from being able to natively run AI. you have to run it on a cloud server share GPU render farm somewhere. It's very, very problematic for a bunch of reasons, but I also appreciate that most people, well, even your general enthusiast, won't be able to afford the next generation of AI cards. So the AI thing also, the price model of it was a giant bait and switch. There's maybe like one ecosystem. If you're on NVIDIA, there's like one main ecosystem now that runs almost everything. But still, the likelihood of you being able to run it on your machine is very small. The sheer volume of things that AI can do now is, I think, beyond most people's comprehension. And I think because of that, it can't be banned or outlawed. Very similar to how crypto couldn't be banned or outlawed or taxed, even if they wanted to. Even if they shut down access in the United States, it doesn't even matter anymore. And AI is the same way. For example, in the very, very, very near future, an AI will be able to watch a movie, record all of the audio, no matter what language it's in, redo the audio with the same voices, put them in a different language of your choosing, and re-render all the lips to be accurate to whatever language it's in. Obviously, a lot of the cultural stuff will be lost when that happens. But 95%, that is going to be an insane game changer. That alone is going to put, I don't even know, tens of thousands of voice actors out of work. Conceivably. You might go, oh, Hollywood, the Film Actors Guild is going to blah, blah, blah. The Film Actors Guild is going to be irrelevant. Because just like they couldn't stop people from burning CDs forever, well, for very long at all, and it only took one little hiccup before people could start recording DVDs and Blu-rays. A couple of, DS games flubbed and didn't keep the code locked, and people were able to jailbreak the DS, and so on and so on and so on. 3DS maybe, I don't remember. Sooner or later somebody's gonna hiccup and Sora is gonna get out onto the internet, and people are gonna be able to just full on make movies. Even Google Collab now is trying to ban AIs if you don't pay them, but they don't tell you how much conceivable bandwidth you get on any payment model, because the reality of the fact of the reality is they don't know. Even when I was paying for the pro version of Kyber for a month, they had a lot of problems. And I'm not dogging on them. There's a point to this, which is that the technology, and this is why you don't ever subscribe for any AI ever unless you plan on using it for a month or two max. The speed at which AI is developing is outpacing the services that anyone that can provide a service for it. AI developers are outpacing the services that they're developing for. And the need for it is growing. Like HR, gone. Recruiters, gone. Like tech support, gone. Chat, gone. Foreign help desks, gone. Software developers, gone. They go, oh, software. They're never gonna be able to replace software. We're one generation away from them being able to replace probably 95% of software coders, and probably the next generation after that, AI is going to be able to code for itself. So I think by and large, when you see people on Twitter X going, I still don't like AI. I still don't like AI. It's so far beyond that now. By the time people were having their very, very first complaints about the very first version of Midjourney, the second version of Midjourney was already in the works. I mean, a lot of you don't know or don't remember, but like, it used to be like this funky like Discord app, and I refused to use it because I'm like, this isn't going to be on Discord for very long. And then people could just make new Discord apps over and over and over again, and blah 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 blah. And sure enough, within like 2 months, it was obsolete. And it was the same thing with like the earlier versions of DALL-E. By the time people were upset about DALL-E and Midjourney, and by the time they were upset about it, the next generation of it was already out. That first generation was when you were essentially stealing people's work. But it has learned at an exponential rate, and I think the Rona kind of screwed it up because it didn't have a lot of things to learn from. It only had old like pre-Rona stuff to learn from, so there was a lot of things it couldn't do, a lot of things that people hadn't programmed into it yet. Like, it didn't know what a centaur was. It didn't know what somebody in an office building was. Besides a couple of stock photos, there had been 3 years of no pictures of anyone in an office. I was talking to these guys. There's like a whole list of stuff that AI still doesn't know what it is, but like, it's quickly achieving all of that and then surpassing it at a rate. I know I keep saying this, but at a rate people can't actually provide as a service. So unless you're running like native, currently iterative builds of their learning software, you're already behind. And most of what you're seeing on the internet, you're already behind. It's that fast, and it's also growing faster than anybody can learn it. So, because by the time the developer has made it and given it to even the early birds, they're already working on the next thing, and you're behind by the time people make YouTube videos of this stuff. Even the earliest YouTube videos, the people that built that stuff are already on to the next generation. And we are roughly we're roughly there now to where the average person will not be able to tell the difference between an AI picture and a real picture. We're there. There's ultra subtle things that you have to start looking for, like reflections and shadows. But by and large, it still can't get reflections right. But it gets the shadows right like half the time. It's pretty much figured bones out. It still doesn't always understand fingers, and sometimes fingers get extra joints, but it gets like the right amount of fingers now. Like, we're there to where the average person will not be able to tell. So you can design a completely brand new character in AI, or you can design a completely brand new character and put them into the AI if you really want to. You can save what makes that character, and then you can tell the AI to do with it whatever you want. People use this to make comic books. They use this to make movies. They use it to make videos. They use it to make art books. Whatever they want. You can make whatever you want. You can make a whole coloring book like this. You actually could have for a long time now. You can just tell the AI to make coloring books all day long. I think the only reason me and my friend didn't do that is we got distracted. But I was like, dude, you could just sit there and make coloring books all day with this thing. People like coloring books. Anyway, the point is like, it's learned enough now to where it's learned from its learning and on and on and on and on, because people have been able to train this thing with new information. You know, a lot of the time you're still brute forcing it. Where I thought we'd be there right now to where it wouldn't always forget some of the prompts, but it still kind of times out and forgets to do some of the prompts because you're just telling it to work too fast. But so I still think we're maybe a generation away from it remembering and all your prompts and asking you, what did you mean by this prompt or that prompt? So still takes a little brute forcing, but you can't. There's certain styles of it that are like really self-evidently AI, and I still think, as uncomfortable with AI as they are, I think they've learned what sort of a classic kind of like mid-journey photo looks like, and they'll kind of interpret that as a very serviceable but bland stolen-ish, because it's based off of existing styles, but it serves a purpose, but it looks stolen, but at least they know, okay, that's AI. And so in that regard, AI has turned into a style. However, those people are probably seeing AI the whole rest of the day and don't even realize it. AI generated text and chats and books and articles, and in fact, I would say that AI written articles are the same. I think people have been reading AI articles for long enough now to where they just kind of accept it, even though it's sort of a mid denominator. It's not like high tier writing, but it's kind of like that bland blah, maybe slightly above average, where it services the explanation and description that's needed, but it doesn't really pop, sort of like the art, where it's kind of reached a plateau that everybody's comfortable with. You know, the AI, when you have it write something, it's still just aggregating information and outputting it in a way that's grammatically correct. But most of those AI models aren't really programmed with like newer data. How was it described to me? It was, if somebody like if a company like revises its portfolio or something like that, you know, the AI could potentially, it won't know that the newer info exists because it has no way to go grab it. But you can have AI cite information now, which is, a lot of people have argued, okay, AI citing where it found its work is still better than a lot of people that just flat out steal everything. So it has an interesting conundrum. The other problem is you have kids that are writing all their work in AI, but then you have the teachers that are checking all their work in AI. And so instructors or facilitators, whatever you want to call them, I think within a generation, we won't have like 0 teachers, but I think a giant chunk of teachers are going to go to sleep and into the retirement sunset, and they're not going to be replaced because every kid learns different and every kid learns at a different speed. AI is the perfect thing to fix that. People might not like that, but teachers already make a metric shit ton of money. I don't care what they say. The average teacher makes a lot of money still. Yes, they put up with a lot of shit, and yes, they can get beat up and worse and nothing happens to them. Those are all problems. Yes, schools have become more violent for kids as well. And not to mention all the problematic stuff with social media and the other social pressures that are causing kids to do things that shouldn't be happening. AI can fix a lot of that. Like, if your kid's struggling, you can pull them out of school and they can still get a perfectly serviceable education. Not only that, they can go learn all the other things that they want to learn too. They don't have to wait for anybody else. Instead of the parent having to buy a bunch of books or the kid having to sit on a bunch of Zoom calls, they can just sit there and talk to an AI all day and learn everything. And you might say, oh, well, that's very problematic for other reasons. It is. It definitely is. I think there has to be somebody watching it, but the problem is, like, if you don't have a diverse group of people with a diverse set of backgrounds, you're gonna end up with the AI telling them that the moon landing's fake and all those things. I think that would be pretty funny. Your kid's sitting there and trying to learn, and the AI is like, well, this was the moon landing, but some people think it's fake. And you're like, shut up, AI. Don't tell the kid that. You're going to confuse the shit out of them. Teach them the basics first, and we'll go into conspiracy theories later. So, I mean, is it stealing everything? Sure, but like at this point, every history book is... Huge chunks of the history books now are fake. They're putting a story to historical events that aren't necessarily linked. It's still incumbent on a kid to go do their research, and that's where going to a library and finding unedited texts or the old like actual encyclopedias before all the information started getting really manipulated. But even then, like a lot of the history books I read, the 5th grade is when I really started knowing it, that the history books were just bullshit. Like, they were like blocks of information that you had to memorize, but it was largely a bunch of names and dates and things that happened that weren't really connected, but someone at some point decided to like creatively weave these narratives between all these historical events. And they're either completely inaccurate, they lack context, or they're incomplete. They're like very high level kind of touch points. And the problem, and here's the thing. Well, how do you fix that, Chance? You think you're so smart? You think you're just going to change education? Well, you could just tell the AI to go grab everything that really happened, or at least the things that everybody, in a bipartisan fashion, like most people can agree on things that happened, and then have the AI just weave it into a new narrative and make sure it doesn't say that Paul Revere was running around with plasma cannon or something, because they learned that on accident from a comic book. Or confused Paul Revere and the Raiders, the song, with Paul Revere. Anyway, there still needs to be peer reviews. But here's my point. There aren't peer reviews on most shit now.
Follow the science.
Yeah, how did that go? Like, it's not any better than what we have now, and what we have now is never going to get fixed. Because, like I said in a prior podcast, like, or 2 or 3, like, we got subverted by communism right after my generation, and those people went to college, turned into psychos. They've had kids by now. Their kids are going through school. And also those kids that went through college and turned into psychos were also teachers, and they had kids. The last generation and a half is fucked. Right. So what are you gonna do? Like, how do you teach your kid history, for example, without digging out really old history books or encyclopedias that haven't been fucked with? To make sure we don't repeat the problems of the past without all the weirdo DEI woke bullshit interwoven in that doesn't make any sense. History should be an unbiased, all sides approach to everything that happened, good or bad, on all sides, and then let kids make up their own minds. And a facilitator is there to just help them walk through the pros and cons of everything that happened and let them make their own minds up. You don't tell them what's good or bad or right or wrong. And the best ideas will come back based on the current situation. Instead, what happens is everyone's pitted against each other and things have just gotten progressively worse. So they like to say they like to say out one end that, you know, racism is learned. Racism is learned. You're not born with racism. You're not born with racism. Racism's learned. You know, but then on the other side, they're like, oh, but you know, some certain ethnicities are born with more privileges than others. It's like, which is it? Like, and these things are taught in history, and kids are learning this stuff from birth. And then you're telling certain kids that they're born more privileged than others, but that you're telling them they're privileged, but that they're not better than anybody else, but that they were born better than everybody else. Like, kids can't reconcile that. Kids can't reconcile, like, okay, they're saying that my ethnicity is better than their ethnicity, but that, like, where do you even go from there? So I should just give everything up and not try to do my best? No, the teacher should be like, you're all free to make up your own minds, but in my class, you're all going to do your best. And everyone's going to learn at a different speed, and everyone's going to learn a different way, and some of you are going to take longer, but we're going to get this figured out. We're going to figure out for every single one of you what way you learn best. That way, from here on out forever, you'll know the way that you like to learn. I don't know, give them all a little code or stamp or something. If it's an AI, then the AI will be like, oh, they like to learn this way. I'm going to teach them this way or that way. And where I think this will help the most is history and math. Because I was talking to somebody about it earlier. Like, I got algebra, I got geometry, and I got statistics. I could not get calc or trig. It was taking me 2 or 3 times longer than the duration of the classes. And they were charging me full price whether I learned the information or not. Is absolute highway robbery the way colleges teach math, period. But yeah, trig and calc are like absurd. But then like how many kids really need to learn trig or calc? Not a lot. And now you can just have an AI do it. So, but can an AI make music? It's not really good at making music yet. It kind of can, but not really. AIs can't really make new art either. So it's sort of like a cheat to kind of get to like rapidly prototype ideas or to be able to describe things to people better. You know, people are using it in D&D a lot. I want a giant spider that has deer antlers, and maybe their drawing is dog shit. So are you gonna tell them that they can't play their D&D game now, or that something has to get drawn like shit? Or they just plug it into the AI and say, make me a green and black spider with ram horns, because that's what I want in my D&D. I can't stand the whole D&D thing. I think it's ridiculous. Some of these people act like, I don't know, they're gonna make this their full-time job and be a paid D dungeon master, whatever. But they're not hurting anybody, and they're not stealing anything by having an AI come up with some of their things for their D&D game in their basement. Okay, they're not a paid licensed DM that has to go source artwork. Okay, so in contrast, a lot of the people that bitch about AI,
oh, your book covers AI.
Well, is that person gonna step up and pay you enough money to hire an actual artist? Fuck no, they're not. Are they gonna support the cost of your books going up until you can afford artists? Hell no. Instead, you know what's happening? All the publishers are redoing all the books for all the book covers, and it is getting worse. Book covers are getting progressively worse and bland and boring. And someone was talking about their book just moving up into the top 50 rankings of something, and the book cover was just words. And then I think one of the I'm not shitting on this author. I don't know who they are. I don't know what their book's about. But their book was just words, and then one of the words was like a person walking. Now here's the thing. A lot of that's branding. A lot of that's marketing. I'm not talking shit. What I'm saying is that book covers are getting a lot more simple than what they used to be. Go look at book covers from the books from like the 80s and 90s. They look a lot different than they look now. The books now just do not look the same. They look like shitty, pale nightmare versions. They don't look good. They don't look bright and colorful and adventurous, and you can't look at the book and see this, you know. If you're lucky anymore, it's still the formula of person reacting to thing. But as a lot of people were joking with romance books, it'll be the picture of an apple. Or the picture of a apple wine glass. And I thought maybe they were being like a little pedantic, but I started seeing them on my feed, and I'm like, what the fuck? How many books do I need to see that are just the front book cover is a fucking apple? How much money do you really think they paid an artist to fucking render another apple for their romance book? Like, don't give me that shit. Whereas you go look at was it 80s and 90s, whenever it was, where it was like Fabio and some gal and Fabio and some other gal. Like, there was a whole industry around that, right? However, the publishers had metric shit tons of money. They had writers on staff that could, articulate what the cover wanted to be. And maybe it was Fabio holding an apple, but it was, whether you loved or hated romance, at least you could look at the cover of a romance book and go, okay, I see Fabio with another chick. That's a romance novel. Now it's like, oh, apple. Oh, wine glass. What the fuck ever. And sure, there was a big chunk of time where people were just making like mid-tier quality like CG render artwork. And I think there was I don't want to say this. I think there was like a market that was okay with that. It looked like kind of cheap, but that's because they didn't look like, S tier renders. But they looked serviceable, and I think everyone was able to accept those. They looked like a little off-putting and a little cheapish, but it's like, okay, somebody with some rendering tools put in a little bit of work, and they have their character saved, and those are their character models, and they're able to make their character. So I wasn't a hater, but I'm like, yeah, it's too bad that we don't have professional rendering tools, and writers certainly don't have the time or the money or the resources to do that. So the ones that took the time to make their little CG characters and their little CG book cover, I think that was perfectly serviceable. And I know one of them is listening to me from above right now, scowling at me. Dude, they were perfectly serviceable. I'm not a hater. A lot of people did it, and a part of me is kind of sad to see that go. It's the end of another era, and the problem is all these book cover selling websites, they don't allow AI. Well, that's fine, but AI is the easiest way to give somebody an example of your idea. I don't have to sketch it down on a notepad over and over again, try to even remotely slightly get something serviceable to get it on a tablet and try 10 more times, and then try to hand it to an artist that's going to charge me hundreds and hundreds of dollars. If they can get it right at all, if they're not a total scam, or I can just throw it into an AI, get something, hand it over to somebody else who can fart around with it in Photoshop. Which a giant chunk of Photoshop is AI now. That's a whole different can of worms, but like, we can come up with something serviceable. Is it perfect? No. Some of them look better than others, and some of that was undoubtedly trained on something somewhere. But if someone shows me one of my book covers that was actually stolen from something, I'll be floored. Because here's the problem. Probably 80% of my book covers, maybe 70%, are person reacting to thing. Which is what almost all post-apocalypse shit-fan dystopian books look like. Unless they've got just some jank bottom tier publisher shit out of shitty shit. And a lot of those people are fucked because there's nothing they can do about it. Their publishers got them by the balls, and that's the price that you pay for the shotgun approach and not being able to control your own IP that you made. And I cut ties with one a week or two ago because they wouldn't stop fucking virtue signaling. But they had an amazing book cover, but they didn't own the rights to it, so they can't do anything with it. And then the cover was too spicy for Amazon or something, and they had to fucking censor the book cover anyway. Like, dude, fuck off, man. Why put up with that shit? Because you only care about the sales of your book, and you can sit there and JO all day about your book sales numbers, but you can't do anything with your IP at all except for just sit there and act better than everybody else. Woo! You didn't do shit. You lucked out and got a good publisher, and some of these people will admit it. And I refuse to read their stuff. Like, if they're already popular and they're already doing great, that's a huge turnoff if reading their Twitter feed is just them sitting there bragging about how amazing they're doing. How much of that's them and how much of that's their publisher? And then they just sit there and they're fucking douchebags to everybody all day. Good job, you made it. And now you can just sit here and virtue signal all day. That is the fucking last thing that I ever want to be. Like, my whole thing is like, I want to lift everybody up. And I have been lifting up people before me ever since this whole thing has started. And I'm still lifting people up above me. And I'm going to keep doing that. I never want to get at the top and just treat people like shit all day. When in reality, it's a facade. Yeah, they're making money, but they don't actually own anything that they're doing. They're shitting on a product, and that's it. They don't own that. Their publisher owns that. Their publisher can decide tomorrow that they want a big piece of poop as the front of the cover, and there's nothing they can do about it. And the publisher can just change whatever they want in the book too. I've argued with writers before.
God told me to write these books.
Okay, do you read them after the publishers tweaked them? No. I can't. Okay, well, do you incorporate, readers' feedback? No, I can't. It's all in the publisher's hands. Oh, okay. So you're not doing what God told you then. You're actually just shitting something out to a publisher and you have no idea or control over it afterwards. I mean, just be honest. Don't virtue signal to me. Like, if 70% of your posts all day are just you talking about how righteous you are, I don't need to deal with that. I don't need to deal with that, just like I don't need to deal with engagement bait. People stealing each other's tweets all day and people stealing memes all day. Like, people will steal memes talking about AI. I'm like, well, you stole the meme to complain about AI. Like, well, it's different. No, it's the same fucking thing. So that's kind of my AI rant in a nutshell. Could AI still be stealing? Yes, absolutely. But I challenge people this. If you're making enough money, use your AI as a prototyping tool to hand it off to an artist and make their life easier and share some of the money with them. One that's worth a shit. Okay? That's all. If every book artist, if every author supported one starving artist, this world would be a better place. That's the cautionary tale of AI, is writers thinking they don't need artists anymore. Like, no, you're a dog shit artist. Admit you are. Just use the AI for prototyping so you can describe it to an artist better. That way the artist knows exactly what you want, instead of having to play the phone communication game because you're both speaking a different language. Because authors think that they write really well and then realize that they actually can't describe what's in their brain or shit. So they can make it themselves and they'll know what they like when they make it, if they even know what they want. If they don't know what they want, they sure as hell can't tell anybody else what they want. Just why half the time brute forcing things through an AI gets you where you need to go. Because you tell it to generate things enough, and sooner or later it's going to generate something. But then you have to trust the person, you have to trust the artist to tweak it. And you can't tweak it too much or it'll break it. It's the same thing with website design. I worked with a website designer and she would make exactly the website they wanted. And then they would get these bright ideas, and eventually they would have her tweak it so much that it would break, and then they would blame her for breaking and scope creep, and she wouldn't get paid. They wouldn't want to pay her. Then they'd tweak it themselves and make it even worse because they didn't know what they were doing. And I've carried those lessons with me my whole life. Like, scope creep is just insane, but you can throw something in an AI, say, hey, tweak this a little bit. Can you do this way? Can you do this way? And some rules can be bent and some rules can be broken. And sometimes, like in one of my book covers, sometimes you just need the backpack to go a different way. Or sometimes you just want to throw an American flag patch on a backpack. I was thinking about throwing like name tapes on all of my characters' backpacks, but I didn't want to. But an AI can do something like that in like 10 seconds. Or somebody really good with Photoshop could conceivably do that really quick. But they're going to want a lot of money because they spent a long time honing that craft. But if nobody's paying you, if you're not selling books, you don't have money to pay anybody else either. People go, oh, well, I'm reading something else right now. Okay. I read really slow. Here's my favorite one. When I start reading something, I read a whole series. Well, if that's the case, I would have sold so many books right now, and that's just really not the case. People are... I'm sure it sounds nice in their head, but most people have no intention, not all, but most people have no intention of buying your book, no intention of reading your book. It just is something that sounds or seems nice in their head. Likewise, oh, well, I would listen to it if it was an audiobook. Oh, well, I have it for free on YouTube. This happened the other day. Oh, I have it free on YouTube. Like, like a podcast, like an audiobook. Oh, well, is it a radio play? I'm like, no, I don't have a whole staff of people to do a radio play. Oh, well, YouTuber XYZ did theirs by themselves. And theirs is a radio play. I'm like, okay, well, are you even going to listen to mine? No answer. Okay. Is it their full-time job? Are they retired? Are they a millionaire? Like, oh, there's always going to be like one other person somewhere that does something better than you. But that's how these people's brains work. They're going to go support somebody that doesn't need any support. That has money, that has marketing, that can do loot crates. Oh, well, you need to ship your stuff to more content creators so they can do unboxings. Do you have any idea how many hundreds of dollars that costs? And how much time it makes? And it takes. And there's no guarantee they're going to open it on stream. Or that they're not going to toss away. I've told people this so many times. It has happened to me. Oh yeah, I'll read those. If you send me those books, I'll read those. I put like a whole loot crate together. Took it and basically threw it behind him. Oh, I don't read. I'll do these in a giveaway or something. Never to be heard from again. will not answer a single one of my emails. And that YouTuber used to constantly talk, I give so much money away. I have done so much for this community. I have done so many giveaways. I'm just a good Christian and a good American, and I serve my country. And okay, well, you just shit all over me then, so I guess I'm not a good enough Christian or a good enough American, or I'm just not high enough in the creator's sphere to warrant any fucking respect whatsoever after donating money to you on your stream, trying to get your attention, constant fucking emails, other people like. So tell me, like, why, if people aren't gonna support me, how I should somehow conjure out of nowhere resources to help other people. Pay it forward. No, you have to have resources first to pay it forward. So I'm not begging, I'm not asking. What I'm saying is, like, think about these things before you judge. And you might say, well, you're talking about people and they had an apple. You're talking shit about people who have just, an apple for their romance book. I mean, these people have publishers. So I'm not talking shit about them. I'm talking shit about the dog shit publishers. And I'll talk shit to the publishers right to their face. I did it again the other day. Probably my favorite author as a kid, just got them a fucking worst cover art for all their books rebranding I've ever seen. I'm just like, you and everyone's like, you signed off on these? Oh yeah, aren't they good? It's from artist such and such. It's like, I feel so bad. That gal or guy, they're putting their name on these. Everyone's putting their name out there, and maybe they worked hard on these covers. Maybe they didn't. The covers don't mean anything to me. They just look like shadowy, kind of nightmarish blah. Barely more than smears. And it's like, you didn't do this. Your publisher did this. And you're in bed with your publisher. And you count on them for distro. That's all it is. The publisher has been in the game for so long that they have distro rights everywhere. And so you gotta suck their teats. That's it. That's it. Publishers are giant fucking gatekeepers. And that's it. They keep all the riffraff out of the bookstores. They're like what headhunters used to be, where you had to go through an agency, which had some pros. Okay, it had some pros. How it was supposed to work is, it let them pick, good people to send forward. So each agency only send a couple people forward, and took a lot of the burden off of hiring managers. Okay. It usually worked out really well most of the time, not every time, most of the time. That's the way publishers are now. It's just like, you can self-publish unless all you care about is a number. And now I get it. And yeah, there's some places out there where it's like, well, these people submit you to every single Barnes & Noble and Apple, and they do all the work for you. I mean, that's nice, but I guess I haven't looked to see if they take a cut, but I assume that they do. I assume you assign all rights to them because they wouldn't do that shit for free. So it's about 15 minutes to 2 a.m. I think I'm going to chop this one and then do I want to talk about area study really quick, and it's easier if I chop this in half, so I'll be RB. Alright, part 2. This is going to be a shorter part, but I want to talk about area studies really quick. Whether you're a prepper or a book writer or trying to set up ham radios or whatever, it's a good idea to know all of the important stuff around your area. Infrastructure and who lives where and stuff, and usually you get an idea, kind of like a baseline of the cars that drive by. You know, you'll see who waves and who doesn't. You walk around your neighborhood, you try to meet everybody. That way you start to notice like people who walk by that don't belong to any of the houses, or people that are joyriding on a nice Sunday. But you know, try to learn who lives around you, who's related, and 99% of the time it's not going to be a big deal. But like something that I was thinking about, I didn't think this would be a problem in the middle of nowhere, but I have a pretty good feeling that there's kind of like, there must be a party house around here somewhere, because there will be a bunch of cars that drive down and then a bunch of cars that drive back, and none of them wave. A lot of them have like tinted windows, and it's just kind of frustrating. I think, everyone, anyone should get to live anywhere or whatever, and when you're out in the middle of nowhere, everyone should just be minding their own business. But that only works in peacetime, right? So let's pretend. I don't know if these people are good or bad. They don't stop. They don't wave. I can't see them. They all have tinted windows, and they'll fly by with their bass thumping. And ironically, in the city, they would have all been checked by now. But in rural areas, it's not a big deal because everyone leaves each other alone for the most part. But in shit is the fan, let's pretend that house is the bug out for all these people in these tinted windows that play their loud music as they fly by our 35-mile-an-hour road at 60. Right. So what's to stop all of them, and shit it's the fan, from coming to this house that they want, that they hang out at, and then all being able to spread out and easily overwhelm everybody else? So in a protest scenario, or a riot, or a takeover of a rural area, they always have one house. It's like an insertion attack. I'm forgetting. It's like almost 2 a.m. I'm forgetting the names of all the attacks right now. An infiltration maneuver. They get like one place and then they kind of spread out from there. Southern Prepper ones talked about this a lot too, and then they only need to hit like the edge of one of the houses, and then they can just work their way. And even if you've got a really tight-knit subdivision, there's almost always one house that's kind of poking out. And in rural areas, each house is usually kind of like right at the edge of the peripheral of the next house, and so unless you have everybody on radios, you're not going to be able to network. And I've noticed a lot of the people out here just do not think anything bad's going to happen. They don't think there's going to be grid down. They'll sit there and they'll bitch about smart meters, and they'll bitch about stuff coming in that's going to drive their prices up, but they're just, it hasn't been like real enough for them. So they don't want to get on radios. They don't want to work on battery backups. They sit there and they farm and everything. So they're kind of like halfway there. And they care about defending everything, but not enough to take it real seriously. You know, so you've got to kind of do your own area study, try to figure out which houses you can trust and which houses are kind of unknowns. And in rural areas, it's a lot harder, but if there's a bunch of families that live in a bunch of houses, you can kind of go through like process of elimination. But it behooves you to keep a notebook out and write down what people say. So if they start throwing last names and addresses around, oh, that's the McCoys at 123. Those are the Hanks, and they don't get along with the McCoys, or whatever. You can get your notebook out and write it all down. They're gonna kind of think you're weird, so you might want to wait till they leave and try to remember it all. But if you get along with one of them, eventually, like, the rest of them are gonna come over to the house, and you can maybe meet them all if you see them up along the fence or whatever, and you can cross several houses off your list, and maybe you could theoretically figure out, or if you can like watch down the road and see where they're driving, you can start to like eliminate where they could all be going and coming from, especially if they don't wave over and over and over and they're different cars over and over and over. Could be drugs, could just be they're having parties, whatever. But you know, don't complain about them in case they're one of the other people's kid, whatever, blah blah blah. There's so much drama. It's so easy to say stupid shit on accident, as I did when I first moved here, because it didn't occur to me, even though it should have occurred to me, it didn't occur to me that like some of these people have been here for so long that they've all been working on everything around here forever and everyone knows everybody and blah blah blah. Like, it was blowing my mind for months that people live here and were born here. See, it's 2 a.m. and there's still pandas driving around. I don't know if these people don't work. I mean, some of them left at 10 p.m. It's 2 a.m. There's usually only like one person driving around at 2 a.m., but that's the second car. So it's like part 2 of your area study is starting a log of kind of when everybody comes and goes and start to write down everyone's routines. You can learn a lot, you know. And there's a chance that there's either a chance that other people are doing it to you as well, or anything you say to any one of them is getting disseminated to the rest of them. They're all trying to figure out your deal at the same time. So you might get questions like, oh, do you rent? Do you rent? Do you rent? Even though I've told them all, I don't know how many times, I'm like, we're not renting. But I realized the reason why they're asking that is I keep seeing more U-Hauls. And those have all got to be renters every couple months. And I think they're very cautious with renters because one of the things they understand is that squatting is a huge problem. They all understand that. Hyper aware. So in your area study of when you're writing down, and most of this while the grid is still up, you can figure out who owns what just from tax records. And that's not being very invasive at all. It's all public info. It also helps you with things like figuring out where the property line is and figuring out if that's timber land, or does the state own that land, or is that federal? Here's another one. The funny thing is my light's on too, so they all fucking know that I'm up, and they all know that I'm watching them go by. But I don't know what they think about that. But it is what it is. I don't know. There's only so much you can do. But it's better to gather all this info now. And at least I know there's going to be potentially one of these houses that is going to have a shit ton of people at it if the shit hits the fan. That could be good. That could be bad. But when people have the numbers, there's not a lot keeping them honest. When they have the numbers. It's kind of weird like that. They could just take what they want, and there's nothing really stopping them. From a practical standpoint. But when you're the most recent person in the neighborhood, it's just like that in general. When you get othered, potentially. But they don't know. Maybe I'll be having a bunch of people show up here too. It's... You never know. Like, that's so... knowing what ways they're coming in, knowing what ways they're coming out, knowing what cars they drive, knowing what times they come in and out. All of this information, and like when you talk to people, you can cautiously fill in the holes. But the neighbors really don't talk to me that much. Kind of flubbed it up, honestly. Kind of partially being shy and partially being awkward. But I really truly think after we've been here for a full year, hopefully, I don't know. And somebody brought up, like, there's a lot of East Coast, West Coast differences. Like, if I'm working outside in the yard here, nobody's coming to help me. But if I was on the East Coast or the South and I was working outside, people would be coming over all the time trying to help me, according to what I've heard. Likewise, if you're in an Amish community, some of the Amish communities, at least from what I've heard, you'll be totally squared away and fine, and they absorb you into the hive mind, and you're good to go. So it's just an interesting paradigm, but I still think if you're worried about forest fires, or if you want to know where the streams are, you want to know who owns what property, I don't get invited to barbecues, even though they know I'm around. And it's fine. Like, it's still good to know who and what's around, though, and at least know what you don't know. If that makes sense. Like, how far does that forest go? Is there going to be new development? Like, what's that new development over there? I don't know. I'm kind of rambling. I guess that was kind of the end of that point. But gather as much of that info as you can now. And you don't have to bug any about it. Nobody has to know that you're gathering it. Maybe you're just looking to buy more land, and maybe looking around you can figure out that there's more land for sale. Who knows? all kinds. Or yeah, if somebody's cows get out, you'll know who to call. I don't know. Maybe I didn't have as much there as I thought. It seemed kind of seemed more in my head, but kind of not as well. I think the sheer amount of cars driving around today, that were clearly not any of the regulars, got me thinking about it more. But today's like Easter. Happy Easter, everybody. Well, it was, They could have all been having an all day and all night Easter party. I don't know. But it doesn't really matter because you have to think about what could happen, They've got a network and you might not have a network. They're going to have people and you might not. It's just interesting. They're interesting things to think about, and you shouldn't be scared, but you should. Here's another one. But you should plan on having capacity to identify what's going on and be able to address it. So that's like the 6th, 7th. Yeah, I thought most of them went home by like 10 o'clock, but it's like 2 and they're still going home. A lot of vehicles I haven't seen before. But it's all good. They know I see them. And they see me, and it is what it is. Doesn't bug me. I don't bug them. They don't bug me, and this is all in peacetime, though. I really wonder. I've talked about this a lot, and maybe this is what I'll wrap up with. Like, normies act really weird once things start popping off. And once the grid starts going down and stuff, and once people are out of work, like, nobody around here is going to starve. At least during the summer. But I really wonder how these rural areas are really going to fare. Fuel is going to be a challenge, if you don't have stuff that works on batteries and you don't have solar. Like, I really wonder how many of these people have like off-grid setups and everything. I really wish, besides the whole farming, gardening thing, and I think like when it's the appropriate times to put out your American flag, I think you should do that. I think there's a lot of things like that where you can, let them all know that you're all on the same page. And I've thought about that with like the whole like mowing the lawn and stuff. Like, how do you project that you're all on the same page? There's things like that. The cat's wrestling around in the litter box. I don't know. I need to think about it more. There's definitely a lot of things that I could have done better when we moved in. Some of it wasn't entirely my fault. One of the days I planned on talking to them, my mom marched on over and just interjected herself into me trying to talk to the neighbors. Just couldn't just hang back and observe. Had to walk like all the way across to the other end of the yard and just insert herself right into me trying. Yeah, it's just shit like that. I don't know, it's tough. Oh boy. Cat was playing in the litter box. I changed the litter today, which means play in the litter box instead of going potty. There was this. It's weird, right? Like there would have been some good times to meet with the neighbors, but like it's either they're gonna be prepped for it and you aren't, or you're gonna be prepped for it and they aren't. It's really hard to synergize and be kind of on the same wavelength as them. And part of it is like, even when I was in the city or in the suburban areas, I remember that happened. My neighbor had told me that the handicap there was a handicap kid, and so their caretaker had their door kicked in as part of the TikTok door kicking game. He's the one that told me about that. My neighbor told me about that. And a couple weeks later or something, I had asked him, had he heard anything else? Is everything okay? Have they been okay? And he told me, like, you worry too much. You're such a conspiracy theorist. You think everything's gonna be bad all the time, but everything is really just fine. You just really overreact. Like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you're the one that told me that their house got kicked in. And another neighbor had told me before, that their front door had gotten kicked in too, and that apparently, like, our roommate's dog had barked and scared them away. And of course, she was just absolutely drunk off her ass, and so I couldn't deal with it. But still, like, these were the things that, like, I heard, but trying to talk to them was just pointless. Even though, like, I had been really good friends with this neighbor for a long time, at some point, like, the only things that he would ever talk to me about is, like, how racist everybody was towards him. And he's Filipino. He was talking about how people didn't like brown skin and thought he was a Mexican or something. I'm like, dude, what are all these experiences that you're talking about? A, and B, like, why are you talking to me about them? And I had overheard him on more than one occasion telling what it sounds like, him telling people at his house, pointing to me and calling me racist. And I had been nothing but friends with this guy for years, and dealt with, like, one of his kids calling the cops on another one of his kids and getting restraining orders on him, even though he had partial custody, which completely screwed up his custody of them. And there's another car. There's car number 6, which means they had 6, 7, 8. They had at least 8 cars. Anyway, I think that could only be one house, because I think, well, no, maybe there's a couple of those houses that have room for that many cars. Anyway, it's just like, I went through, like, his kid having, girlfriend, and then he had, like, a couple different girlfriends and stuff, and him having family over and Halloweens and stuff, and just the last year or so, he just got so, last year or two, he just wouldn't stop talking about racism and saying that people thought that he liked to ride his bike everywhere and would always say that people were hassling him because he stole the bike and so he couldn't ride his bike. And those things were probably could very easily have been true. Bike theft was a huge problem. The weird thing is, I don't think it had anything to do with brown skinned people stealing bicycles. It was universally homeless people that were stealing bicycles. Usually from each other. But it's just like, it was hard for me to believe that, a cop stopped him in the park and just openly accused him of stealing. I mean, maybe it happened. Like, I don't know, but the thing is, like, conservatives would be having their conservative rallies, and he would say that they were racists and had Confederate flags and shouted racist stuff at him, and I'm just like, really? Do all these like racist things? I didn't ask him. I'm just like, oh yeah, that sucks. But then I don't know, like one day he just started saying that I was on 2 different occasions I heard him tell other people and look right at me and say that guy's racist. And I don't know if it was his way of joking or what. Oh, there's another car. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 2:15 in the morning. 5, 6 cars driving. Anyway, and it's just like, he's Filipino. Like, I have nothing but good things to say about the Philippines and their president at the time that was like heavily against drugs. And our president and their president had like really good relations, and we were supporting the Philippines. This was before the Philippines like fell back to China again. And he was going back there. And I remember kind of when like one of the big shifts happened. He just left for the Philippines and didn't say he was leaving. And he used to always tell me. And we would make sure his mail and garbage and stuff was all taken care of and make sure nothing got left in front of his porch. And then he just stopped telling, and he was gone for the Philippines. Instead of like just over Christmas or whatever, it was like the 2 weeks before Christmas. Then it was like a full week and a half or something into January. Like, he was gone for damn near nobody in his house at all for like damn near a whole month. And I thought maybe something had happened to him. And so I was texting him. I'm like, dude, like, are you coming home? Are you okay? Is everything okay? Do you need us to check on your house and make sure your pipes haven't frozen or something? Like, do you need, didn't even message me back. Didn't even say thank you. Nothing. And then came home and just acted like nothing happened after being gone for like a month. But every time I waved to him, he would always like wave back and say hi and act like nothing was going on. Like, it was the most insane thing. So I'm fully acknowledging that this neighbor thing is like just insanely difficult. And if you don't hang out in mutual areas and do mutual things, there's just not a whole lot of reasons. And if they're far away, it's kind of like, are they waving at me? Are they looking at this way? Should I wave at them? Like, are they about to go eat dinner? Like, is this a weird, awkward time? You don't want to just invite yourself over. Like, these things are weird, right? They're weird, especially when they've got a whole family and a whole network. It does, in a lot of ways, just make you feel like you're on an island. And it can make you feel really isolated. And I if I had to say like what I think one of my biggest things is, are you kidding me? There's another car going by. It's this car car number 9 since like 10 p.m. It's insane. It's a late ass party. One of the mistakes that I think I make is I don't like text enough to just say like, hi, just checking in, hope all is well. Because I think if you only ever message when like shit's bad, that's kind of like utilitarian in a way, but it's kind of like reactive. I don't know. They're never gonna need my help with anything, but it's just, I don't know. Oh no, here's another one. Is this car number 10? Car number 10, I think. It's 2:20 in the morning. It's nuts. Who knows? It could be a bunch of nerds and they had a LAN party for all I know. Oh, who am I kidding? There aren't any games anymore that you can play on a LAN. There's no high speed here. I mean, I think, yeah, part of it is I just need to message them and say, hey, hope you're having a good day. But that's just kind of weird. Like, it's like, are you friends or you're not? Are you not friends? Like, are you just neighbors? Neighbors? I don't know. And it just seemed kind of forced. And obviously they're doing fine over there. It's just weird. Like, I'm not a social person. I'm like an introvert. But like, you can't live like that and survive. You'll get isolated, taken out. So that's why you just can't be like a dick to all your neighbors. And that's kind of like this neighbor that I was talking about. Like, he repaired a lot of people's bicycles and stuff. So I don't know if he had like an ad, but people would come and he would repair their bicycles and stuff all the time. He was, and it wasn't like he was unhelpful. Like, we got a flat tire once, and he saw us working on it, and he came over and just like zip zoop aired it up for us. And he's like, if you ever need my help or ever need a jack or ever need help, you can ask anytime. And I remember we gave him tons and tons and tons of cardboard. Because he worked on cars all the time, and we were getting rid of a bunch of cardboard in the recycle bin. And I can't remember which one of ours ideas it was, my wife or mine, but we were like, let's give him all this cardboard. Like, this is amazing, perfect cardboard. And he like loved it all, and he was like so happy. But he made like, I feel like he made kind of like a shitty remark too, but I don't. But he used it all, like, and so some of it I think was like a communication issue, but I guess what I'm saying is it's really hard and people change, and someone that you might not get along with, you might get along with great. We had another neighbor, the neighbor next to him on the other side was kind of one of those like old timer boomer freedom type guys. And you know, he only spoke country bumpkin. You couldn't understand what he was saying at all. And even though me and him never had a problem, he would always have to like re-explain everything to me, like every time. Oh, that dog don't hurt nobody, and I'm like, dude, I know your dog doesn't hurt anybody. You've told me this like 10 times, and I've helped you herd your dog back in. How many times? Like, I know your dog doesn't hurt anybody. Like, it was just, and so it, you know, he got in a lot of arguments with his old lady and stuff, and the cops were always bugging him. I think, not always, but the cops were bugging him. I think because like one of his vehicles wasn't he had like 7 cars, and like maybe one of his cars wasn't registered or something really stupid like that. But they always handled it well. But you just you never know who you're gonna get along with, and it could end up being your own roommates that are the problem sometimes. It's just anyway. This turned into a discussion about neighbors again. I didn't want it to be, but figuring out who your neighbors are while the grid is up and while the information is publicly available is going to help you out in the long run. If someone jogs by every day, get to know them. It's just like, and if things get screwed up, this is easier said than done. I know this is the hardest thing, but if things get screwed up, just don't beat yourself up over it. Everybody is always in a different place in their life, and they're in different places when they're doing different things, and it's going to take you a while to grow on everybody, and it's going to take a while for everyone to grow on you, and it's always so much easier to see why things aren't gonna work than to try to see how things are gonna work. Does that make sense? I just wish that they had some kind of like neighborhood chat thing, so I could at least be like sort of clued in or figure out where they all hang out at. I think like I talked about last time, I guess maybe what I'm worried about is that they're all Mormons and that they'll interact with me, but I'll always be on the outside, and I'm hoping that's not the case. There's tons of other churches around here, but like I said in the last one that I talked about this, I'm not going to go check every single church and figure out which one they hang out at. As soon as I go to the first church, I'll be labeled. And they know I don't go to church because they see me out in the yard on Sundays. So, they know. But I don't know. Maybe the answer is making a Facebook and hitting them up on Facebook. I don't know. I don't want to do that though. It's way too much like cyber stalking. And they could really take that the wrong way. They could see that as something to rally the wagons and put their risk up. So I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't thought of something, I haven't thought of anything. They have their own lives and their own family, and these people have their own things going on. They don't need anybody. It's really interesting. It's not like a subdivision where kind of everybody needs everybody, because you're all equal. You have the same amount of land. Everyone has the same land, the same resources, the same income, the same cars and everything. So everyone equally needs everybody. It's not like that out here. Everybody's on vastly different footing. There was somebody driving around with a Lotus yesterday. It's like, where the hell did that come from? Even the other people around here were like, where the hell did that come from? Like, who's driving a Lotus in the middle of nowhere? But those are the kinds of things. I was like, they were probably joyriding, but it's kind of weird. Driving older vehicles, you're not going to raise any attention. But I'm sure if I came home with a brand new vehicle, not that would ever happen, but I'm sure that'd be the talk of the town. And I think a lot of these vehicles that I saw driving by earlier, like some of them, well, one of them was like a really souped up pickup truck I'd never seen before. That it had like white LEDs around the whole bottom of it in like every direction, which is pretty cool. But I'm wondering if that's like a TRD Pro or something. I'm wondering if that's like some kind of really high trim, expensive Toyota. It was dark, so I couldn't see it, but information like that, you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Information like that gives you an idea of like what everyone's income is, what everyone's interests and desires are. And I was thinking about that too, is like these people barbecue a lot. We don't really barbecue. So like maybe come this summer, maybe it's time to barbecue some more. But the barbecue pit the people left here is like nasty. So I would want us to get our own barbecue pit. And then maybe if they saw us out barbecuing, they would, things like that. It's going to be the same thing with mowing. Like if I'm out mowing, they see me mowing. After pruning the trees, they're going to see me pruning the trees. So I'm just hoping, I don't know, I'm just hoping through hard work and perseverance, and they're going to see me gardening and they see me watering. I'm hoping they didn't really see me do any of that last summer because they didn't move in. It's starting to come back to me now. They didn't move in until the fall when everything was freezing balls ass cold outside with no daylight. So we didn't really have the summer to bond. But all their stuff's on the other side of the yard. So there's really nothing, I don't know. It's complicated, but regardless, you're going to have to build bonds with your neighbors, like I've said in prior videos, and you're going to have to figure out where everything is and what everyone's alliances are. And here's another thing to think of. Like, I was listening to Rand Paul talk about this, and I know my last podcast I fucked this up, but 70%, I think I'm getting this right this time. 70% of the budget is like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. That's like 70% of the US budget now, I think. And he said we can't touch that 70%. That 70% is like off limits. And then he said, and then the part of the 30% is like the military and discretionary spending or something. I'm trying to get better at this, but the budget, the national budget, is still really complicated. So any Republican or Democrat or anyone in the middle, whoever suggests cutting Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security is done. It's always been that way. That is the death knell for your political career. But here's the problem: it's 70% of our budget. So what's going to happen when more and more and more want to change the age of retirement or Social Security from 65 to 70, and there's going to be austerity measures because we're broke as a country? So how many people in your community are retired and with fixed incomes, and Medicare, Medicaid get fragged up, and Social Security gets fragged up, or the government shuts down and those checks stop coming, or how many people are on unemployment, how many people are on food cards, and the government shutdown happens, and you're not going to know everybody's socioeconomic background, but you might notice if they're driving older cars or they start walking around more. Like, there was people I would just be seeing walking around back and forth every day. It's like, what is this person doing? Do they have a job in town? And they have no car? They don't ask anybody for a ride. Like, what is this person doing? And I think that kind of leads me to my last point. The reason why, when I was in town, when I was in the city, suburbs, the biggest reason I wanted to have the area study done is the homeless camps were getting so crazy and so out of control, and it's only getting worse. And last summer, or last spring, they were supposed to have a law that says no more daytime camping with your RVs or whatever. Like, your RVs can't be just strolling about the city because there's a million things wrong with it. So I was really worried about them. I call it beaching their RVs out here, and us not being able to get moved out here in time, and then there being just tons of RVs. So right now, nothing stops anyone from just beaching RVs everywhere. And there's been a couple times where I've seen an RV or two that didn't look so great going down my road. I'm like, they better not be beaching that damn RV somewhere, because you're never getting them back out again. That's expensive and dangerous. So, shit, it's hella late. My head's starting to hurt, which means it's time to go. So, it's good to know your area. That means walking around, talking to people. You know, it's going to behoove us as soon as it makes sense to start walking up and down the road more. Because there's a lot of other people that have been walking up and down the road. I think some of them are renters. Some of them might just park a car somewhere and just start walking. So the more you see normal people, like, you start to get an idea of who's the regulars, who's walking around certain days. We saw a couple 2 times and didn't see them anymore. We saw another couple 2 times and didn't see them anymore. We saw another couple 1 time and didn't see them anymore. So either they live further down, or they're renting, or they're visiting, or something. But the more, if we started walking around more, everyone would get used to us more. Oh, hi, where do you live? Oh, we live here, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's a super busy road, and it's not a busy road, but I mean, people drive fast, and there's no sidewalk, but there's people. It's getting to be that time of the year where people do more jogging, and there's been more joggers. But then there was a jogger, and then I didn't see them. I don't know. So those are all things. Those are all things to consider. Area study, and I guess it ended up me complaining about my neighbors. So yeah, I'm worried about what everyone's gonna do when they run out of money. What everyone's gonna do when there's no more jobs, and more homeless are just gonna start beaching RVs. There actually is one beached RV, beached trailer. It's been there for a long ass time though, and I think a tree landed on it, so I don't think anyone's living in that one. But if someone's looking around, they could find it. And the thing is, like, these meth zombies, they'll walk around for 20 miles in just a random direction and wake up in the weirdest place, and they'll be hella confused how they got there. And I try to explain this to people, like, well, I could walk 20 miles. I don't give a shit if you can walk 20 miles. That's not the point. The point is, you're not a meth zombie. A meth zombie can walk around 20 miles and just show up in a random fucking place and have no idea where they are and start attacking people. You know, your kids might be out playing. Like, they could end up at the neighbor's house. They could end up at your house. You never know. They could end up in your barn. That's been a huge problem in the past. and how you kind of can't really go engage them legally in most states. You know, they're not a threat to your life if they're out in the barn, so you gotta let the law handle it so nothing stupid happens. Anyway, it's hella late, and my head is aching in that way that tells me it's time for bed. So I'll run to this and get it going in the morning. But I appreciate y'all, and I hope this helps somebody. And I will talk to y'all later. Bye.